All right, welcome in. Monday Fun Day here as the madness is almost upon us here. College basketball. How about a 22-game college basketball slate tonight on this Monday now, March the 4th, and even a conference or two as their championship run is off and running here tonight. So we'll go over all of that. We'll have some best bets for you here, even though it's not the biggest of slates. It is an important slate of games for a whole lot of teams, and we've got three of the best lined up and ready to roll for you here today. As Mr. BL, Brian Leonard, in the house, ready to go, stepping in for the other Brian. His name will remain nameless here at this point. Adam Trigger in the house. He's ready to roll here. Here's a hint if you're new to the show. Look at his jersey. Look at what he's wearing. Also, double R1L, Steve Merrill. Don't look at what he's wearing. The props will kill you eventually. So we've got three guys ready to roll here today in this 22-game college basketball slate. So let's dive in right off the bat with one of the biggest games on the board here tonight in the Big 12 as Baylor. Brian Leonard looking to avenge a earlier season loss, which probably pissed him off a little bit. Taking on Texas here tonight in the new building in Waco. 6.5, I think, is what we saw. The total seems to be getting a little bit of love to the over. How are you approaching this game here tonight?
Well, without Brian here, he would assume that this show would be powerless. But we've got some good handicappers on here today to make up for it, I'll tell you that.
Well done.
Yeah, Texas and Baylor, Longhorns, 19-10 on the season, 8-8 in the Big 12. They beat the Bears, as you mentioned, 75-73 at home in mid-January. This club has won 3 or 4 of late, with the lone loss coming at Kansas. So that's nothing to worry about. Texas 4-4 straight up on the conference road this year, and they have a 53.3 offensive effective field goal percentage. Now Baylor 21-8, 10-6 in conference, but the Bears have struggled as of late. They're on a 7-6 run. But they did knock off Kansas their last time out. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a letdown spot here for Baylor. I know they've got their revenge from that earlier loss to Texas, but after beating Kansas, I could see that happening here. We have these teams very close in our power ratings. We like the way Texas is playing right now. And despite the success Baylor's had at home in this series, I believe they won the last 4. I think this one goes down to the wire. Like I said, we've got these two teams ranked much closer than what this line would suggest. We're catching 7 now after 6.5 earlier. Even better, give us Texas to take this one to the wire.
All right, liking Texas to keep this thing close here tonight in Waco. There should be a pretty darn good game, and so should the next one here. Trig, we'll head to the ACC. God, I don't like this Duke team at all. But yet here they are on the road as a 6.5-point favorite, I think is what we're looking at. Taking on NC State, who would love nothing more on senior night to stick it to them. The question is, do they have enough to be able to take down Duke in this game, or at least stay within this 6.5 number tonight?
Yeah, Joe, I'm with you. I don't really love Duke either. But I wish I liked NC State more because it certainly seems like the right spot to play against Duke. It is the way I lean. As you can see, I've got my NC State gear on today. I do think they can hang around. If this continues to get bet up, I may sort of reevaluate if it gets to, like 7. I saw some 6.5s earlier. But yeah, I wanted, I guess, long story short, just to start the handicap, I did want to find a way to play against Duke coming off of the big blowout win over Virginia. But man, NC State, they do some things I don't like. And so I'm just going to kind of break this game down and I'll give you the information that I've got. So first, I am going to give NC State some credit for home court here. Now, I've come on this show and talked about PNC Arena not being a great home court atmosphere, but you have to kind of know what games draw and what games don't. Brian Power made a great point when we went to Akron, Kent State last year. I was like, man, this is one of the greatest atmospheres I've been in. I knew you had that ready. Said, this is one of the best atmospheres I've been in for a college basketball game. And he said, Trig, well, you got to also remember that Akron, Kent State, you're getting the A game from the Akron fan base. These two teams are very close. They dislike each other. You're getting like the best crowd Akron has to offer. And that's kind of the case here. So, I've criticized NC State's arena for being like, it's an NHL arena. It's where the Hurricanes play. For some of these games, they get 10,000. It seats 19,500. But for this game, it'll be sold out. They drew 19,500 for North Carolina on a Wednesday night in early January. You can bet that in March, with Duke coming into town, this is going to be a sellout crowd for NC State. And they're 12-4 at home, regardless of what the atmosphere is. So I do think you have to bump them here for home court advantage. I know I personally give them another point and a half, 2 points to the number for home court in this matchup, because I know it's going to draw far greater than some of these other ACC matchups have in that building this year. Another reason I do like NC State in general right now more than I did, let's say, a month ago, is they're cleaning up some of the issues that I felt like they had when I saw them play, back in January. The biggest thing being shot selection. That was like my biggest takeaway from seeing them in person, is this team just takes bad shots. Typically, you can't do that against Duke. I think that's probably my biggest concern in this matchup, is that you just can't get away with taking bad shots against a team that's as efficient as Duke is. But they've gotten better in this sort of area. And I almost think that 2-3 in their last 5 games is a tad harsh. I mean, they had a great comeback to take a lead against Syracuse, and then they ended up falling short. Credit Syracuse in that game for surviving a huge haymaker in the second half, bouncing back and finding a way to win that game late. I thought they played a really good half of basketball over the weekend against North Carolina. Just couldn't hang on, but I don't think they played a poor game there at all. I think it was a relatively good effort. They covered a big number in that game. And then one of those wins is a nice upset win over Clemson, went on the road and won as a 7.5 point underdog. So that impressed me. If they were a little bit tougher inside, I think I'd be like all in on a play here with NC State. That's one thing that I don't think either of these teams truly have, is like interior toughness. Chris Mack, former Louisville head coach, former Xavier head coach, made a great comment. I was listening to him on Field of 68 a couple weeks ago, and he said, he feels like this Duke team doesn't have that dog, like that's the saying he used, that dog in them, meaning like he related it to the teams he coached against, and he was like, this team just doesn't have that killer instinct, at least not in his opinion. And not really in my opinion either. I've gotten to see this team play 3 times in person already this year, Duke, that is. And I do feel like they're a little bit soft on the inside. The one game it really showed up was when they played Baylor, and they really struggled with Yves Missy. And Missy left the game, with an injury, never came back for the final 13 minutes of that game. And that's the only really way, in my opinion, that and some favorable calls is how they flipped the 6-point deficit and ended up winning that game. And then, of course, Pitt went in and bullied them at Cameron, a team that can be a little bit physical on the inside. So Duke does have trouble with that. The problem here is, Joe, I don't know that NC State, a team that couldn't get to the rim against Virginia Tech, one of the worst rim defending teams in this league, the game I went and saw them, I don't know that they can fully exploit that. One thing that NC State will do well is limit turnovers. They only turn it over 9 times per game. It's 21st nationally. They do take tough shots, but they do have a couple guys that can make tough shots. DJ Horn specifically, 17.6 points per game. He's a tough shot maker, in addition to, taking some of those tough shots. But ultimately, I come back to Duke's KenPom offensive and defensive efficiency numbers. This is a team, like, I haven't had them in my top 10 for much of the season, but KenPom's got them 7th. And more interestingly, Joe, 8th adjusted offense, 20th adjusted defense. That defensive metric is a little bit better than I realized than I thought it was. It's also kind of come up from where they were early in the season. So I do have a lean here to NC State. I think it's like kind of the home run spot for them. They're going to have the sold out crowd, but it just wasn't enough to make it like a client play. So we'll call it lean NC State plus 6.5. Who knows, if they take more money, Duke does, and this goes 7.5, maybe I'll jump in.
All right, not a bad look. I'm wondering if the fact that your 7-foot center got run over by a couple of fat fraternity brothers and you scream bloody murder has anything to do with the simple fact of maybe Duke not having that dog. And I'm just saying, maybe perception is reality here, but if you couldn't dodge a couple of fraternity chicks running on the court, I'm not sure how you're going to make it out of North Carolina State here tonight. Steve Merrill in the house, double R1L here, guys. And if you haven't caught on, Steve is not wearing a North Carolina State jersey there. He might very well have his Weber State thong on. I'm not sure here, Merrill, but big game breakdown here tonight. Montana State, Weber State. Look at that. I know good old Trig has absolutely probably been to both of these schools here, but what are we doing? Because the line certainly moved in favor of one team here this morning in this matchup.
Yeah, I thought I saw a camera in my changing room before the show, and I do have my Weber State thong on because that's the way I'm going in this big game breakdown. So much to work with. By the way, I have a free play in that Duke North Carolina State game on my page right now at WagerTalk.com. I'm going to come up with a different game for you for the show here in just a moment, so stay tuned. But once again, I do have an opinion as well on that Duke NC State game for free at WagerTalk.com. Interesting matchup here. You know, we talk a lot about revenge, last home games, blah, blah, blah. And it is a great handicapping premise to start with, but we don't just blindly play teams because they lost the first meeting. More times than not, the team that lost the first meeting is the inferior team, and they're going to maybe lose the second meeting. And we do talk a lot about these last home games, but it's probably less meaningful than it's ever been in the history of college basketball, with all these guys never staying until their senior year anyway. Now, you could make an argument in these smaller tier mid-major conferences, you know, the guys are a little more loyal. They don't go to the NBA, they stay longer. But even then, with this transfer portal now, I know with William & Mary, a low-level mid-major school that I follow, these guys are only here 2 or 3 years because they transfer in after a couple years. A lot of them are one-and-done grad students. So I think last home game not quite as strong, and I also think revenge is overused. And this is a situation in which I think there's going to be a sweep. And I like Weber State for a couple reasons. You mentioned that line move. It opened 2.5. It's up to 4.5. Sharp money is definitely on the road favorite. And one thing I like about playing road teams in both college and pro basketball is we get a discounted price. And this is not a strong home court. Montana State is just 13-17 overall. They've lost 7 games at home this season. They're just 9-7 straight up, 5-8-1 against the spread. Not a strong home court, so I have no problem fading them here. And I love to dig into the box score from the earlier meeting. Back on December 30th, Weber had an easy 22-point home win, up by 9 at the half, pulled away one by 22. And what jumps out to me about that is we always look at three-point shooting first because we often get huge discrepancies for these blowouts. Montana State was plus 6 points more from three-point range, and they still lost by 22. That means they got outscored by 28 points from two-point range and the free throw line. In fact, they had a 35-14 deficit in free throw attempts. I know home teams sometimes get more calls. They don't get a 35-14 edge unless you're dominating down low. And on the season, Montana State does not get to the free throw line as much as normal. And Weber gets there above average more times than normal, 21 versus 17. So there's a lot of things to like about Weber State here, and we get a very short price. That is why we saw this line go from 2.5 up to 4.5, but I still don't think it's high enough. I'd expect it to hit 5 before this game tips off at 9 o'clock Eastern tonight on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, Ken Palm's got him not even remotely close as far as the rankings go here, and also has them, I think, 73-70. They got Weber State winning in this game, so it's no wonder why the line is moving in their direction here. But 3 games, guys, 3 big game that we just broke down for you here. We do have 3 best bets coming up here from these guys in 3 games that they really like. I do want to remind you and invite you, of course, to hit that subscribe button if you're new to us here on Wager Talk TV, as you will not find anybody else with as much daily as well as weekly content on all the big games scheduled across all sports, in fact, in here at Wager Talk TV. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, become part of the Wager Talk TV family, and maybe you too can duck, unfortunately, what Kyle Filipowski couldn't when they stormed the court. Brian Leonard, let me ask you something here, my man. I know you got a 5% best bet in the NHL. I believe you crushed the last one here when you were on the show talking about it. Tell the folks what you got going on over at Wager Talk, and then let's talk your best bet involving Nicholls State and Northwestern State here tonight.
Yeah, we've been on a really nice run under 5%, regardless of the sport. Really big weekend for us. 15-5 the last 3 days, 24-10 the last 7 days. And we love this play in the NHL today. And you mentioned it last time. We did have a 5% play. We win 4-0. Obviously, never trail in the entire game. That's the kind we like to play. So we've got one of those going today. In fact, we've got 5 plays up on today's card: 4 basketball, 1 NHL. Get them all right now. We've got the $69 special going for a week of service, so that's even a better deal. But make sure to grab those for us today. We're taking a look at the Nicholls State and Northwestern State. And as you pointed out in the past, Joe, we've done very well with these added board games. And so we're looking to do the same once again tonight. The Colonels, Nicholls State, 16-13 overall, 11-5 in the Southland Conference. This is a team on a 12-5 run, but they lost at McNeese State last time out, 83-62. So they're off an embarrassing loss. In fact, both times they played McNeese State, they got beat by a combined 157-118 in those 2 meetings. So they don't have very good matchup results against McNeese State, but against the rest of the teams in the league, they've done very well. They've dominated the rest of the opposition. Nicholls has been very competitive on the road, and they've covered 3 straight games off of a loss. And as we mentioned, that was a very big emotional loss last time out, losing by 21 to the league's best team in McNeese State. Demons of Northwestern State, 9-20 on the year, 7-9 in league play. The good news is they've won 3 of the last 4 games as of late. The bad news is the rankings of those teams: 345th, 341st, 359th. So they're stepping up big time here to play Nicholls. And Nicholls is a team that has dominated this series over the years. I expect them to win this. We're getting close to a pick'em situation. We're laying 1.5. I really like this Nicholls State team here on the road against the Northwestern State team, who's getting credit for beating nobodies.
All right, good stuff there. Trig, 2 pretty cool logos there. Did you notice that there with the? I thought they did a pretty good job for just jazzing up a simple. And Nebraska's don't look like that. Damn it. Pretty impressive stuff there, Northwestern State and Nicholls State. But you, my friend, you are going to go in a different direction here. I believe the A-Sun begins its tournament tonight, and it can only be one winner. But Queens and Florida Gulf Coast are going to be going at it here tonight. So tell the folks what you got rolling at WagerTalk, and who should we be looking at in this matchup?
Yeah, isn't that awesome? It's March. It's March 4th. It's actually a little bit later this year than normal. Sometimes this starts in like the last day of February, but we finally have conference tournaments. As you said, the Atlantic Sun tips off tonight, and I'm going to preview, one of the A-Sun matchups. It's going to be my best bet for the show, and that's Florida Gulf Coast and Queens University. So first thing you need to know about this tournament, this is a tournament that plays at home sites. It's the last of a dying breed here. It's my absolute favorite, Joe. There's only like 4 left that do it, but they play the tournament round by round at home sites. Now, what you need to know about this game is it's at a neutral. This is a wrinkle. I believe it's new, or maybe it was new last year or this year to this tournament. Stetson gets the home game. And because this is the opening round, and these are the two of the lower seeds, FGCU and Queens are going to play at Stetson to see who plays them tomorrow night. So interesting wrinkle that they're forcing the lower seeds in this case to play a neutral road back to back in the conference tournament. So something you definitely want to have, know when you're handicapping this game, really more so for tomorrow. But this game is on a neutral floor, and that's kind of I guess important as far as Queens is 1-15 on the road this season. So again, it's not a true road game, but still something to point out. I think it has something to do with the fact that they don't play a whole lot of defense. So, this is a team that I talked about a bunch early in the season. I kind of had them circled as a team I thought could kind of come out, make some noise. They knew they were kind of rated in the middle of this conference. I thought they might be able to climb up and contend because they have guys like AJ McKee, Dayton Albury, some really good scorers. But the reason they weren't able to do that, Joe, and the reason that they're in the opening round game in this conference tournament is they just don't play any defense. 316th 316th in adjusted defensive efficiency per KenPom. And last game, so Steve kind of commented on this, like the better team tends to figure it out over the course of a season series. That's exactly what happened in this series. FGCU went to Queens and lost back in early January. FGCU trailed last week to Queens. Not only did they figure it out toward the end of the first half, they went out and smashed them in the second half, and it's because they kind of finally figured out how to score on this Queens defense. And I don't think Queens is going to really have an answer for that here. The other thing that makes this a tough matchup for Queens is the way that these two teams play. Queens wants to get up and down to the rim, fast pace of play. They've got McKee and Albury who can really get after it, get to the rim, and get up and down in transition. They play the 8th fastest tempo according to KenPom, adjusted tempo. Queens, number 8 in the country. But FGCU is very good at taking that away. They want to sit in a zone. They're going to play zone. They're going to pack it in. They're going to take the rim away, and they're going to force you to shoot the ball. And Queens does not do that particularly well. They don't do that efficiently. Now, Queens did win the first meeting, but if you look at the shooting numbers, they hit 11 threes. I think they took 33 of them. So they didn't score it at a very efficient rate. And the reason they lost by 10 in the second meeting, 90-81, was because they just couldn't outscore FGCU in that game. And so that's kind of what I think happens here. Again, I like the adjustment Florida Gulf Coast made in the second half of their game with Queens a couple weeks ago in terms of scoring the ball. And I think they can do enough defensively to sort of, keep Queens at bay. Because again, you look at this team on paper, they've got two guys in McKee and Albury that can really, really score. And McLaurin is BJ McLaurin's a nice post player. So you do need you have to be able to score to beat Queens, but also you've got to be able to stop those guys. And I think Florida Gulf Coast, if they sit in the zone, it turns Queens into a little bit more of a 3-point shooting team. And specifically McKee is not the guy, that's not his game. He wants to get to the rim. He wants to play in transition. He's only a 30% 3-point shooter this year. And I think if he gets into the scenario, especially if Queens sort of starts to trail in this game, where he's got to force up shots and make something happen, I think they could potentially, pull away and widen that margin. So Florida Gulf Coast, second meeting, they ended up shooting 53.2% from the field. I think they figured Queens' poor defense out. I think they'll probably shoot something similar here. So Florida Gulf Coast -4 makes the most sense to me of anything on today's card. I haven't added this as a client play yet. I'm not ruling it out, so I will tweet that out if I do. But it is going to be my best bet for the show. Florida Gulf Coast -4. I think they win and cover and advance in the Atlantic Sun tournament tonight.
So, yeah, interesting, Scott. Let me ask you this quick here, Trig, because they're coming in as the number 7 seed, I think, in this tournament. And I was talking to a guy yesterday, in fact, thinks that at 30, 40 to 1 might not be a bad shot. They get past this game. Obviously, they're going to have to take on either the 1, 2, or 3 seed eventually to get to the final game. But why not Florida Gulf Coast to win the A-Sun?
Yeah, I mean, listen, in these conference tournaments, a lot of times you're going to look for a price. You're going to look for, like a reason to oppose the top dog. I think it's something I'll probably talk about when I do my Patriot League preview later. In terms of trying to oppose Colgate. So again, I would say it's reasonable sort of to take that position with them only because I like them in their first matchup. If I didn't like them here in this matchup with Queens, I probably would say no, I wouldn't want that position, but I probably won't bet it myself, but I'm not going to talk someone off it because I really do think FGCU wins and advances tonight. And then you need to win a home game against a top seed. But if you win that game, the field could open up a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, pretty good price there on them there as the Atlantic Sun off and running here tonight. Eastern Kentucky is the favorite in that tournament there, won the regular season as well. So get ready. The madness is almost upon us, and nobody knows madness quite like Steve R1L Merrill. He's all about the madness here tonight. And in fact, he did and does have a best bet here for the show involving Idaho State and Montana. Steve, break it down for us here and tell us what you got rolling at WagerTalk.com.
Yeah, I've got a strong NBA best bet tonight in Monday basketball action. I posted a free play in the NC State Duke game, a high-profile college game. So once again, check out my page right now, Steve Merrill, WagerTalk.com, for that strong late night Lakers Thunder national TV best bet on the NBA, and also a bonus free national TV college opinion between Duke and NC State. Also, check out the NBA tip-off show at 4:15 Eastern live and replayed archived here, as I'll be on the NBA show later today on Monday as well. Wanted to look at something a little bit different here for a show, a bonus free play. I like Weber State, as I mentioned in the big game breakdown. The Big Sky's seen a lot of sharp money today. If you check the WagerTalk live odds screen, you'll see that the sharp money has come in on Weber State, as I mentioned earlier. Northern Colorado is a road favorite. And two other games, I was close to using Eastern Washington here for the free play, but Eastern Washington plays really fast. Sacramento State plays really slow. I'm afraid they might be able to dictate tempo. So I'm going to go with the other Big Sky game, which has also seen some sharp money, and that's Montana. Montana Grizzlies went from -8 up to 8.5. And as we're doing this show, it's now gone to -9 in many spots. But I agree with that move. I like Montana -9 at home tonight, 9 o'clock Eastern against Idaho State. And there's a couple reasons why. First of all, I talked about this with the Weber State breakdown. We don't just blindly play revenge. Idaho State lost the earlier meeting this year, 76-68. Both teams shot extremely well from three-point range. Both shot extremely well from the field. But in that game, Montana was +8 for the game, -3 from three-point line. So they outscored them by 11 from two-point range and the free throw line. They only got to the free throw line 6 times on the road, and they still won the game and covered. I think there's some more upside here on a strong home court, 12-3 straight up, last home game of the season. I do think strong home courts, last home game means a little bit more. And I just don't like this Idaho State team. Both teams play slow. Idaho State plays very slow, but Montana is also a slower half-court team, which a much better offense, almost 150 points better efficiency-wise in the rankings, and that'll be the difference once again. So look for this sweep from the Montana Grizzlies -9, and don't forget a bonus free play in that Duke-NC State game on my page right now, along with a strong NBA best bet. Nobody has won more units in college and pro basketball sides combined in the history of WagerTalk.com. I'm up over 176 units. I'm looking to add to it tonight with another strong NBA best bet for Monday. Steve Merrill, WagerTalk.com.
All right, great stuff, Steve. And there you
Hey,
got
Joe.
it here, guys. Oh, shoot.
Joe, can I take I want to take a question from the chat. I see Bill Sandoval.
Look at
What's up,
Trig.
Bill?
Look at Trig storming the court. I love it. Go ahead. What do you got?
Watch out, fat
He
sinners.
said
Let's get in his way.
he said last year you called UConn early. That's right. I had UConn, I think
Yes.
25-1 or 30-1 to win it. Gave it out in
Yep.
January. I've actually managed to get on the national champ 3 years in a row now. That was the best one in terms of a price, but CT and I had Baylor from the beginning of the season in 2021. And then in 2022, I think on pretty much every show I gave Kansas out at the beginning of the tournament. And then of course UConn, at 25-30-1 was the best winner. But Bill asks, who have I got this year, or who's one that he should look at? And since I didn't really give out a play that I made, I will give you out something that I bet from a future standpoint. And so if I had to jump in with one team right now, it would be Tennessee. From in terms of where the price is. Now I played this earlier, before the season. I took more I think I took 26-1 a couple weeks ago. It was right after they lost. They lost to someone. It was an uglier type loss. It wasn't the South Carolina game. It's a couple weeks after that. But even right now, I still think Tennessee is one of the few teams I really think could win it. Although I got to admit, I was at the UConn game yesterday, and they were real impressive. I mean, I felt like they were going out about 70% in terms of an effort standpoint, and they ran Seton Hall out by 30. But I think for me, if you wanted me to commit to a team right now, I don't think there's that many teams that can win it. I'm looking at my KenPom screen. I know, I can the guys can probably attest to this. It's typically a team that's both offensive and defensive efficient. Steve's going to jump in, but I think it'd be Tennessee for me right now. Number 3, adjusted defensive efficiency, 17th in offense.
Yep.
Neck is awesome. They've got a guy that can kind of score at will. So I'm all in on the Vols. I've got quite a bit on them to win the whole thing.
Wow. We'll talk about changing the narrative there, Rick Barnes. He pulls that off, huh? Oh, that would change everything here, wouldn't it, Merrill?
Yeah, Joe, I'm glad that Trig brought this up because I actually kind of wanted to talk about this today, too. I was doing some research this weekend, and Bill Sandoval is one of the great viewers, and he always asks for William and Mary picks. So, Bill, I didn't give you a William and Mary pick last week. Play against Hampton. Who would have thought? They didn't win a game in February, by the way, and they beat Hampton by double digits. That's how bad Adam Trigger's Hampton Crabbers. That's the high school, Hampton I forget their freaking name. Tigers.
The
I don't know.
Pirates.
Anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
The
let's
Pirates.
get to what's important. Hampton and William Mary are not winning this. But look, I went back through the Ken Palms and looked at the last 8 national champs. And now this is the final ranking, so it's going to be a little different when the tournament begins. But the last 8 national champs have all had a better offensive efficiency rating than defense. Even when Virginia won it, they finished like 3 and 5. They still were better offensively than their defense, which breaks that whole adage that defense wins championships. It doesn't hold up anymore. In the 80s and 90s, that might have been true. But the other thing is that most of those teams have a pretty good defense still, like top 20, top 30 efficiency. So like Alabama, who's like 1 in 100 right now in the rankings, probably won't get it done. So I looked this weekend and I just checked now. It's the same. There are only 5 teams that are a top 30 defense that are also better offensively right now. And I'll run down the list. Creighton and Purdue, Duke, UConn, Arizona. We saw what happened to Purdue last year. Now, granted, when UVA lost as a 16 seed, they came back and won it the next year, but I just don't know if I trust Matt Painter's history there and Purdue's history. Creighton seems to be good every year and falls short. So that would leave Arizona, Duke, and UConn as the only teams that are really good both offensively and defensively with a better offense. So just something to think about historically.
Good stuff. I think Brian Power just texted in Lemoyne would be his pick for national champion there. All right, that about does it. Brian Leonard, Adam Trigger, Double R1L, Steve Merrill. Guys, we certainly do appreciate the insight, and that is just one of the many reasons here, guys, as we throw the recap graphic up for you, that you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, become part of the Wager Talk TV family here. We certainly appreciate your time as we've got the best bets up on the screen for you. But good news that we'll be back tomorrow. We get, I believe, the Sun Belt begins at some particular point. Maybe tomorrow the Sun Belt tournament is off and running. So we've got a lot of madness in front of us here, guys, and we're going to do our best to try and navigate through it all with you. So on behalf of these guys, we certainly do appreciate the time. Best of luck with all the plays this week. In the meantime, if you click on that video on your screen right now, you'll get access to a lot of the other big game previews as well as best bets that we have here on WagerTalk.com. Appreciate it, guys. Best